Welcome back to yet another podcast, and remember to subscribe. Today we have a contradicting story that deserves to be dissected, and yes, here we are. We look into this story. Kate Middleton still plays this drinking game, royal family member Mike Tindall says. The Princess of Wales recently shared that she has become a lot more conscious about alcohol since her cancer diagnosis. When you tell one lie, you better remember what you said. William, Kate, and those around them that enable them do nothing but lie constantly. They need to meet up again and get the story straight. The friend is exposing the truth. Now this is just a big failure. The contradiction speaks a lot. Let us really dive into this web of confusion because honestly, it is getting harder and harder to keep up with the shifting narratives coming out of that palace. One day we are told one thing, and the very next day, someone from their own tight inner circle blurts out something completely different that blows the whole carefully crafted image right out of the water. It makes you wonder who is actually running the public relations over there, because the left hand clearly has no idea what the right hand is doing. They build up this elaborate picture of perfection, expecting everyone to just nod along and accept it without questioning a single detail. But the moment you start looking at the actual timeline and the statements being made, the cracks just start appearing everywhere. It's a massive blunder, a total failure to keep the script uniform, and honestly, it is becoming quite embarrassing to witness. You see, we were recently subjected to this very somber, very deliberate message about lifestyle choices, wellness, and being incredibly conscious about what goes into the body. We heard all about this newfound caution regarding alcohol, presented in a way that was clearly designed to evoke a specific kind of sympathy and admiration for a disciplined approach to health. But then, almost immediately afterward, Mike Tindall goes on a public platform and completely contradicts that entire narrative by laughing about how she still actively participates in drinking games. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot be the picture of ultimate dietary restriction and health consciousness on Monday, and then by Friday your own family member is outing you as someone who loves a competitive drinking session. It's just hilarious how quickly these stories fall apart when they don't coordinate their talking points. They really need to sit down in a room together and get their fabrications aligned, because this constant flip-flopping is just making them look ridiculous. When you choose to live by a script, you have to be smart enough to remember what you wrote on the previous page. But instead, they just seem to make things up as they go along, depending on what kind of public reaction they're trying to manipulate at that specific moment. If they want sympathy, the story changes to one of extreme vulnerability and health struggles. If they want to seem relatable and fun to the public, suddenly they are beer-chugging competitors. It's a complete circus, and the public is finally starting to see right through the performance. This whole situation really highlights the stark contrast between how certain people are treated in the media versus others. Look at how Megan Sussex is treated for simply existing and being authentic, while this particular couple gets away with a never-ending cycle of half-truths and blatant contradictions. Megan Sussex has faced years of unrelenting scrutiny, where every single word she says is dissected by the press to find even a hint of a mistake. Yet she remains consistent, poised, and true to her experiences. Meanwhile, William and his circle can put out completely conflicting statements within the same week, and the mainstream media just glosses right over it like nothing happened. The bias is so loud, but the internet never forgets, and people are calling it out more than ever before. The fact that a direct family member like Mike Tindall is the one dropping these truth bombs just makes it so much sweeter. He's right there in the mix, attending the private gatherings, seeing what actually goes on behind the closed gates of the estate, and he clearly didn't get the memo about the new sober, fragile persona that was being pushed to the public. He just went out there and spoke about the reality, completely oblivious to the fact that he was exposing a major contradiction. It's an absolute failure on their part to control the narrative, and honestly, seeing the palace panic behind the scenes trying to clean up these little slip-ups is the best entertainment around. When you look at the track record of William and those who enable them, it becomes incredibly clear that consistency is just not their strong suit. They have built an entire existence on maintaining an illusion, but an illusion requires absolute control over every single variable, and they just don't have that control anymore. People are talking, friends are talking, and the truth is slipping out in the most casual ways possible. It shows a profound lack of respect for the public's intelligence to think that people wouldn't notice a contradiction this massive. You simply cannot claim to be entirely avoiding alcohol for serious health reasons while simultaneously being celebrated by your peers for your prowess in drinking games. The math is just not mathing. We have seen this pattern of behavior time and time again, where the public is told one thing to generate a wave of positive press, only for the reality to emerge later on and prove the exact opposite. It's a tired tactic, but they keep relying on it because they think the media will always protect them. And for a long time, the media did. But now, with independent voices and podcasts like this one, we can look at the facts objectively and call out the hypocrisy. The contrast between the protected royals and someone like Meghan Sussex, who has constantly been villainized despite her honesty, is just impossible to ignore anymore. This latest blunder is just another example of how the entire machinery surrounding them is failing. They are trying so hard to project this modern, relatable, yet deeply traditional image, but it's all collapsing under the weight of its own untruths. If you're going to commit to a specific public persona, you have to ensure that everyone in your circle is on board and briefed on the details. But because their narratives are built on convenience rather than actual reality, people forget what the official line is supposed to be, and that's exactly how you end up with Mike Tindall completely undermining the official palace line on a podcast. It's truly a spectacular mess, and the more they try to ignore it, the more obvious it becomes. They want us to believe they are this perfect, unified front, but the reality is a chaotic scramble to keep up appearances while the truth keeps leaking out from the sides. The contradiction speaks volumes about the lack of authenticity at the core of their public image, and no amount of glossy photographs or choreographed public appearances can hide the fact that they simply cannot keep their stories straight. Let's really break down what this means for their credibility going forward, because once the public starts questioning one part of the narrative, the whole thing begins to unravel. If they are willing to misrepresent something as basic as their lifestyle choices and habits to fit whatever narrative is convenient that week, what else are they being completely untruthful about? The level of deception required to constantly manage an image like this is exhausting, and you can see the strain it's putting on their entire public relations apparatus. They're constantly in damage control mode, trying to patch up the holes left by their own carelessness and the loose lips of their friends. It's just highly amusing to watch the contrast between this chaotic mess and the dignity of Meghan Sussex, who has always spoken her truth with clarity and conviction regardless of the intense pressure put upon her. Meghan Sussex doesn't have to worry about family members accidentally exposing her in a lie because she operates from a place of genuine authenticity. She doesn't have a team of palace enablers fabricating a new personality for her every 6 months to please the tabloids. The difference in integrity is night and day, and it's becoming more apparent to the world with each passing day. The enablers surrounding William and his circle are just as much at blame for this failure as the principals themselves. They cultivate an environment where honesty is secondary to optics, believing that if they repeat a narrative enough times, it will magically become the truth. But the world has changed, and audiences are much sharper now. People remember the articles from last month, they remember the video statements, and they absolutely notice when a family friend comes along and accidentally pulls the rug out from under the whole structure. It's a total system failure. You have to laugh at the sheer irony of the situation. They spent so much time trying to craft this image of a deeply serious, health-conscious individual who's making all these profound sacrifices, and then a bloke like Mike Tindall comes along, probably over a pint himself, and just casually mentions the wild drinking games. The lack of communication within that family is astonishing. You would think that if you were going to launch a massive public relations campaign centered around the specific lifestyle shift, you might want to send a quick text to the extended family saying, "Hey, please do not talk about my drinking habits on your next media appearance." But no, they are so disorganized and arrogant that they didn't even think to protect their own narrative. This contradiction is not just a minor slip-up, it is a symptom of a much larger systemic issue within that entire institution. They are trapped in an old way of doing things, relying on deference and a compliant press to shield them from criticism. But in the modern media landscape, that shield is full of holes. When a contradiction drops, it spreads across the internet in seconds, and no amount of palace spin can pull it back. They are losing control of the story, and it is entirely their own fault for building it on a foundation of inconsistency. The public deserves honesty, but instead they are treated to a revolving door of manufactured stories designed to evoke specific emotions. It is manipulative, and frankly, it's insulting to everyone's intelligence. They want the benefits of being perceived as relatable, everyday people who enjoy a good game with friends, but they also want the special treatment and sympathy that comes with a narrative of extreme fragility and restriction. You simply cannot occupy both spaces at the same time without looking completely disingenuous. And let us not forget how this exposes the hypocrisy of the British press, who will undoubtedly try to find the way to spin this as somehow charming or endearing, rather than calling it what it actually is, a blatant contradiction that proves the official narrative is a fabrication. If Meghan Sussex had been caught in a contradiction even a fraction as large as this one, the headlines would be calling for absolute ruin. They would be writing psychological profiles, analyzing every move. But for the palace favorites, it's just a quirky little story, a harmless joke among family. The double standard is absolutely glaring, and it is why so many people have completely lost faith in mainstream royal reporting. The truth is, they're running out of moves. They've played the sympathy card, they've played the traditional card, they've played the modern family card, and now all those different personas are clashing against each other. It's a massive failure of strategy, and it shows that those who enable them are completely out of touch with reality. They're operating on an outdated playbook, and it's blowing up in their faces in real time. They really need to meet up again and get their story straight, because this is getting embarrassing. The next time they decide to release a statement about their lifestyle or their health, they better make sure that everyone, from the siblings to the in-laws to the distant cousins, is singing from the exact same hymn sheet. Otherwise, they're just going to keep providing endless material for podcasts like this one to dismantle. It's a total comedy of errors, and the contradiction speaks volumes about what's really going on behind those closed doors. The reality is that the public is tired of being managed. People want authenticity, which is exactly why Meghan Sussex has such a dedicated and passionate following across the globe. She represents realness, resilience, and a refusal to play these ridiculous manufactured games. She left that toxic environment behind, and looking at the absolute mess they are in right now, you can completely see why she made that choice. Who would want to be part of a system where you constantly have to live a lie, terrified that your own family members are going to accidentally expose you every time they open their mouths? This entire situation with Mike Tindall exposing the drinking games is just the tip of the iceberg, really. It points to a much deeper level of dysfunction, where the image is everything, and the truth is just something to be manipulated. They have spent years constructing this elaborate fantasy for the public, but fantasies are fragile things. They require everyone to play their part perfectly, and the moment someone steps out of line and speaks the truth, the whole illusion shatters. That is exactly what we are seeing happen right now, and it's a massive, undeniable failure. Let us take a closer look at the enablers, because they play a huge role in keeping this whole charade going. The courtiers, the PR advisors, the loyal journalists, they all work around the clock to paint this picture of absolute perfection and devotion to duty. They shield William and his circle from any form of accountability, creating an echo chamber where they genuinely believe they can do no wrong. They think they can tell the public one thing today and something completely different tomorrow, and that no one will have the memory or intelligence to connect the dots. It's an incredibly arrogant mindset, and it's exactly why they keep blundering into these embarrassing situations. The contrast with Meghan Sussex is always relevant because she was someone who refused to conform to that culture of deception. She wanted to be real, she wanted to do meaningful work, and she refused to let the palace machinery dictate her every word and action. And for that, she was punished by the system and the press. They couldn't handle someone who wouldn't play their game, someone who insisted on maintaining her integrity. Now, years later, we see the very people who tried to tear her down completely struggling to maintain their own manufactured narratives. It's a profound form of justice, really. When you look at this specific contradiction regarding the alcohol consumption, it really exposes the lack of foresight in their strategy. Did they honestly think that no one would remember the statements about being more conscious and restrictive with alcohol? Did they think that Mike Tindall, who makes a living by being a chatty, relatable sports personality on podcasts, would suddenly become a master of palace secrecy? It's just complete incompetence. They want to use Mike Tindall to make themselves look cool and down to earth, but they forgot that you can't control a loose cannon once you give them a microphone. It's just a big failure all around, and the contradiction speaks a lot about the internal chaos. There's clearly no centralized leadership, no real strategy, just a series of panicked reactions to whatever the media cycle demands. They're so desperate to maintain their popularity that they're willing to say whatever it takes in the moment, without any regard for long-term consistency. It's a short-sighted approach that is finally catching up to them, and the results are on full display for anyone who cares to look. We need to keep calling this out because the mainstream media certainly won't. They will continue to print the glossy photos and write the glowing articles, completely ignoring the fact that the stories they are telling are fundamentally incompatible with each other. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe, like, and share.